Giant African land snails are invading Florida. Thousands are making their way into backyards. But these snails are much more than pests. They're a health threat.
It's big. I knew there was something back here, though.
These aren't your average garden snails. The slugs can grow up to 10 or more inches from their antennas to the tip at the end of their shell. They eat over 500 species of plants, destroying more than just gardens and lush landscapes.
Almost every property we find them on has ideal habitat. By that I mean the plants and plant material that they feed on. The first 30 days of their lives, they primarily feed on stucco and concrete to build their shells larger. They get the calcium out of the stucco. The nation depends on Florida from October through May for fresh fruits and vegetables. So it's a major threat to not just Floridians, but the entire nation if they were to get into Florida's agriculture.
But what worries the Florida Department of Agriculture is the serious health risks these hard-shelled creatures impose.
The tiny little parasitic nematode is actually found in the slime of the snails. People get curious when they see such a large snail. So when you touch it, and if you don't decontaminate immediately, then you can, what do we all do in the state of Florida during hot sunny days? We wipe the sweat from our eyes or around our mouth. You've introduced that tiny little worm into your system where it will eventually make its way up to the meninges covering of the brain, and that can cause meningitis and again things like blindness and deafness.
This isn't the first time Florida has had an outbreak of these snails. The first invasion was in 1965 when a young boy on a family vacation to Hawaii decided to bring these snails back as souvenirs.
What had happened was his grandmother had released them when they started laying eggs into the backyard. 3 years later, the city of North Miami contacted the department because they had a huge snail problem and asked us to come down and give them a hand. It took us 4 years to collect 18,000 snails.
So far, the Florida Department of Agriculture has been able to eliminate over 128,000 of these enormous slugs, and they have implemented innovative ways to destroy them. One of their newest methods utilizes dog detection teams. Canines are sniffing out the huge snails in areas that were previously difficult to access.
You can tell this kind of shell is kind of sideways, so he's already dead. You can see all the juice and stuff. And you see all the eggs that he put out kind of at the last minute, possibly because he felt himself kind of slowly slipping away.
We got EPA approval to use metaldehyde, which is a more effective bait and molluscicide. So that has helped us out because now we're getting anywhere from 80 to 90% mortality rate when we find these snails.
Officials say the snails, like many other non-native species, come to the U.S. as exotic pets and are released into the wild. They don't need a mate to reproduce and can lay up to 1,200 eggs a year, making them harder to eliminate.
They lay them normally like right below leaf litter or just below the soil, but these were kind of exposed and easier to see.
These pesky slugs are known for their large shells, but they can be difficult to identify when they're young and can be easily mistaken for native snails.
They are oftentimes mistaken for like the Stock Island snail, the Florida banded tree snail, and a couple of other native snails and common snails like the Guadalupe. As you can see on this snail, the lines are vertical and not horizontal. If there's even a single horizontal line, then we can definitely rule this snail out.
If you run into one of these giant African land snails, authorities are asking you not to handle them and instead call the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services at 1-888-397-1517. For Comcast Newsmakers, I'm Candace Kelly. Thanks for joining us.